Hey everyone, it's Liz. Welcome to my channel, Blue and Hazel, and I do homeschool videos here, curriculum reviews, and some handicraft videos. And if you're new, I'd love to have you subscribe. So we just finished US History 2 from Gather Round. I can put the review of US History 1 from Gather Round in the description for you. So I initially thought that we'd get through all 6 units, and I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think we might get through like 4. We'll see. Some days we're doing half a lesson. We get on rabbit trail, or the kids aren't paying attention very well, or it's just really packed full of a lot of information. Like, too much is too much, and so sometimes it's just like clear we need to stop. And so we're going slowly. That's okay with me, as long as they're learning, as long as we're having good talks and they're able to recall some things, not everything that they've learned. And so I'm liking it. We're going to keep using it. I don't know if I like it so much more than master books, which is what we switched from America's Story 1. I like them both, I guess. They're both used in our home as read aloud, and so I'm doing most of the reading from the teacher guide. We don't necessarily do a lot of the worksheets, and so I'll talk a little bit more about that. But as far as the way that we're using it, I'm not totally sure that I'm sold that this is like way better than Master Books America's Story 1. I actually really like that a lot. It was also a little bit less wordy, and so that was maybe helpful at their age too. But since I've already paid for them and we are enjoying them, I think I'm just going to keep going with it. These are just a really awesome way, I feel like, to start some discussions in your home about our country, about the US history, about Indigenous Americans, about the wars. There's just so much in here that we're learning, and I feel like the kids really are learning it. There's also a lot of supplemental stuff that they've worked really hard to put in here, and I like that. There's like huge book lists inside for different age groups. Generally speaking, just really engaging books that the kids would love. Some of the titles I recognize, some I don't, but overall just really high quality book recommendations inside according to the time period. And then another thing they have on their website are like resources online. So you can go to their website. Up top there's a menu bar that says online resources. Click that, go to US History 2, and then they'll have each day that you're studying, like lesson 3, lesson 4, or whatever. They'll have like YouTube link and some other kind of link, So like for instance, we haven't used those a ton. I'd like to use them more, I just forget. But one thing we did today was go on there and we watched a 5-minute clip on the Louisiana Purchase, and it was just this cute like animated recap of what happened and who did what, and cartoony, and the kids really enjoyed it. And so they've kind of provided all this extra stuff for you if you want it. A few other thoughts I have. One, it's just super wordy, and I'll show you inside in just a minute. We'll turn the camera around and give you a look at the teacher's guide. But each lesson is packed with information and stories and words, and what happened during these different events. And I feel like it is too much information for my kids' ages, and honestly for me, like, it's a lot. And so one, I feel like adjust my expectations so that I know this is about exposure. This is not about like fact regurgitation. This is not necessarily for me even about like memorizing half of the stuff in here. Some of it's gonna stick, and I know that we're gonna come back around when they're older, probably in about 4 years, and cover all this again. But I'm also really trying to go through while I'm reading and kind of pre-read some of the paragraphs and say, this is kind of like way over their heads. This is way too much information here, or, oh, that's not that important, I'm just gonna skip this line. Because we're not using Gather Round as our main curriculum, which is really how it's meant to be used. All of your subjects are in here except math. And then the history ones are a little bit different because they're mini units, so they're shorter amount of worksheets in the kids' notebooks that I printed off. And they're obviously really focused on just history and geography. There's not gonna be like all of the other stuff that you might see in other units. I think it works really well to be used as a unit study for history. But because we're already doing spelling and we're already doing handwriting and we're already doing copy work with Brave Writer, I feel like this is busy work for us. And so with the first unit, I really wanted the kids to just try it and see how it worked. But I was worried about busy work then too. I'll show you just an example of like stuff I'm not having them do. You know, here, lesson 3, free write your ideas. Pick someone you learned about this week and write a story about them. I'm just not gonna have them do this because I would have to not have them do something else that we're doing outside of Gather Round. And that's in the early elementary one, so this would be for my 3rd grader. We didn't do some of the stuff some of the stuff inside of here either, like, do you like to play dress up? You may not know it, but when you dress up and imagine you're someone, you're really doing something called drama. Throughout this unit, you're gonna learn more about drama and practice this performing art as you prepare to show what you've learned. So they're having the kids, you know, do extra fun stuff like act out. And I feel like we kind of just skipped this part and we just are having discussions about it. Unit 1, I did have them do this and it was okay. I feel like history took a little bit longer because I would read it, we'd talk about it, and then they would open up their workbooks and do the stuff in here. And you know, so that would add maybe an extra 10-15 minutes on for them. Yeah, I just kind of decided the way I like to do this right now is as a read aloud. And then we, instead of kind of doing written narrations in here where they're like writing about what they learned or, you know, answering a question with a one-word answer, I'm having them just narrate back to me what they remember. And so usually we'll do this in a few ways. I'll ask them if they can recap what we read yesterday before we start the lesson today. And I can kind of help give them some prompts like, oh, do you remember we talked about, you know, Thomas Jefferson? Okay, yeah, well, what did he do? Oh, yeah, that's right, and did he also, you know, X, Y, or Z? And then that kind of gets their brain to like start thinking. But for the most part, we're just doing oral narrations. And then at the end of the lesson, I will kind of ask them, okay, so what do you remember? Or sometimes we'll pause halfway through and say, okay, so what do you remember about what we've read so far? And then just see what they can recall. So it doesn't have to be a perfect summary. It doesn't have to have all the facts. Of course it won't. It's just a good practice, I feel like, of learning how to kind of recall what you've read and for me to see what they might remember. Because families who are only using Gather Round or families who just want to use this for history but have their kids do all of the workbook pages, you're going to be getting in more writing, you're going to be getting in more, you know, question and answers. You'll just be getting a little bit more of the worksheet aspect in. Now this is for my 2nd grader and it's very, very similar to what my 3rd grader has in the early elementary. Like she's still got things that she can fill in and write in there. You can see there's even in lesson 3, free writing, same thing. Pick someone you learned about this week and write a story about them. And then here's a picture to go with it if you'd like. Some map work right here. I don't know if you can see that. One thing you'll notice it's different in the early reader is there's going to be more of the tracing, drawing picture type of stuff. More of the tracing here, picture, but there is still some writing. For my kids, like, writing has been a little bit of a pushy thing, I guess, like a pushback, and so we're learning how to do that in other ways, like through free writes. We're learning to do that through copywork. We're learning to do that especially by writing letters to friends, and so if this is something that's going to cause like them to be dreading history, I don't want that. Like, I want them to love history. And me having them do extra writing that they don't want to do during history time is just kind of an area I don't want to mess with. I want them to just really love talking about it and learning about it, and then save the writing aspect for kind of the stuff we're already doing with Brave Writer. Here's a close-up of the early reader. You can see there's lots of tracing. Trace the name of these essential items below and draw, write, or dictate an example of each one in the spaces provided. And yeah, they do have a lot of like map sections anytime that they're asked to do any type of geography work or mapping. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is just kind of a look at a lesson inside of the teacher's guide, just to give you an idea of how this one looks. So here we have, this is U.S. History 2, Lesson 5, War Begins. And generally speaking, if you'd like to, this has a prayer at the beginning of the lesson, and you can skip that or you can say that with your family, whatever you like. Then you start it and you literally just read. So, you know, we arrived today at the tipping point. The careful balance that has been maintained between the British and their American colonies was falling apart. Let's explore the days leading up to the first battle of the Revolution. Keep in mind the two very different perspectives each side brings to this moment in history. Each thought they were in the right. Not only did the colonists and the British have different ideas about who was right and wrong, but there were many different opinions among the colonists themselves on how all of this growing conflict should be handled. So you can see how it reads, like you would just read that to your kids. This is more information, the First Continental Congress, convictions, a definition of loyalists, patriots, fence sitters, continuing on. Here's just a quote from somebody, and then here we have the battle at Lexington and Concord. And so some kind of cool random fact about Paul Revere. Here's an activity break if you want to take it. This one would be worth it. It's, you know, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's famous poem, Paul Revere's Ride, is powerful, describing the events of on the eve of the American Revolution. Find the text on the resource page and read it. So that would be like a good little pause to actually read. But just kind of showing you how long that lesson is. Starting from here, going to here, this page, and this page, and then this last thing. That's just a lot. It's a lot for their ages, and so what oftentimes we'll do is, like I said, half a lesson, or I will take out pieces that I don't want to do or don't want to read. So it does have a really beautiful picture map in the back that you can use. It's attached to your teacher's guide. I feel like the kids need to be able to see this each lesson, especially when they're learning, you know, where the different colonies were, when they're learning about like the Louisiana Purchase, when they're learning about you know, the French and Indian War, and they're learning about westward expansion. It's really good to have like a visual of all of these places and learn to look at maps too.